So guys, let's get into our tips for round 14. Of course, we have a lot of buys this week, which include Carlton, Essendon, Geelong, Melbourne, West Coast, and the Gold Coast Suns. So there is only 6 games this weekend, but let's break down our tips for this week. My tips are Brisbane to beat St Kilda on Friday night. On Saturday, I've picked Fremantle to beat the Bulldogs, Hawthorn to beat the Tigers, the Swans to beat the Crows, Collingwood to beat North Melbourne on Sunday, and then the Giants to beat Port Adelaide on Sunday as well. Now, my brother has actually sent through his tips as well. So he has gone Brisbane to beat St Kilda, Fremantle to beat the Bulldogs, Hawthorn to beat Richmond, Adelaide to beat the Swans, Collingwood to beat North Melbourne, and then Port Adelaide to beat the Giants. So we've got a couple of differences this week. My brother has given his explanations as to why he has picked different teams this week as well. So, first of all, we will start with the Fremantle game up against the Bulldogs. Now, my brother originally tipped the Bulldogs, but he did tell me why he has changed his tip to Fremantle. So he's gone, like last week, Norton and Darcy are both out and have to rely on Bontempelli and Jamari Ugle-Hagan to kick their goals, and Fremantle's defence should hold up. Now, I'd say the same thing as well, but I think the inconsistencies of the Western Bulldogs is still to be questioned. I think their midfield is very on and off. I'm unsure as to why they're not playing Bontempelli as much as they should be in the middle of the ground. I know they keep on chucking him forward to try and make him a forward option, but I don't think they get it in there enough without him. Now, Ed Richards should be back this week for the Bulldogs, so that would be a good inclusion for them. But right now, I think Fremantle coming off the bye. I think teams are starting to do better coming off byes. We've seen the likes of Sydney winning last week, North Melbourne winning their first game, and Brisbane after their byes. So maybe teams are doing better off the byes, and I think Fremantle, fresh off the bye, will be a lot better off for it. And I think Fremantle, both teams, I think the Bulldogs are more potent when their best team's in, but without the likes of Norton and Darcy, I think they are going to struggle. The only reason why I think some people would be picking the Bulldogs is because it's at Marvel. If it was at the MCG, which I don't really think it would be, but if it was, I would give the Bulldogs a lot more of a chance here. But at Marvel Stadium, Fremantle, I think they'll be pretty decent enough here coming off the bye. Their defence will hold up pretty comfortably, and yeah, similar to how my brother thinks, I think Fremantle will win that one. Now, the Swans versus the Crows. Very interesting one. Obviously, it's a pretty big game from last year when Ben Keys kicked that goal that was called a point, and that inevitably made them lose that game, as well as missing the finals. But my brother has gone the Crows because they're going to be dragged through the mud this week, which they inevitably have, and they should respond in front of their home crowd. No Walker last week, so he should be back this week. My brother has made a caveat to this tip, though, that if Taylor Walker is out of the side, that he will be picking the Swans. But I thought Sydney would have fallen off last week, and I'm not saying they can't lose against the Crows, because I think that this will be actually quite a close game. I don't think the Crows are going to play 3 straight bad games in a row. I think it is a bit of a danger game for Sydney, though, because I think it's something that Sydney are expected to go and win this. We are expected to beat the Crows, and pretty comfortably. I don't think that's going to be the case, because I think Adelaide will want to make a response, because the last 2 weeks they've played poorly. They have missed a couple of players, I know that, but they haven't played well. I mean, if you play well and without the injuries, that's more than fair, but they haven't played well either against Hawthorn and Richmond. And I think Rankin will be back this week as well. So with the likes of them ones back, I think the Crows do have a sneaky chance here. But I think Sydney's form right now can't be questioned. I'm tipping Sydney basically on form. That's basically where I'm sitting at right now. And yeah, I think this will be a pretty close game. I think it's very different to what a lot of people will be thinking. But so the last game that we want to talk about is Port Adelaide versus the Giants. Now, I have picked GWS, he has picked Port Adelaide. He has said that Port Adelaide, after the bye, should be fresh. The Giants can't win in the midfield battle, and Port Adelaide dominated stoppage and clearance. Port Adelaide's defence should stack up well against the Giants' forward line. Now, that's kind of where I've got the Giants winning at. If the Giants can equalise in the middle, I think that they've been very off the last 4 or 5 weeks, I would say. I thought after the bye they would respond, but they didn't really play that well on the weekend against Hawthorn. They did for a bit, but I think Hawthorn did very well to just keep in touch for the majority of the game and then eventually run over the top of them. I know it was definitely a harsh free kick against Tom Green, so they could have won that game, but I think Hawthorn in that good of form were good enough to win that game. On the other hand, I think Port Adelaide, I think they're going to be a bit sluggish off the bye, if I'm being honest. That's where I'm sitting. And I think the Giants' forward line is where it's going to be won here. I think that Toby Green could have a big day here. I think they do have a couple of matchups that they could chuck on him, Port Adelaide. Maybe Alir could go to him, or maybe a Ryan Burton would be an option. But I think this is where the Giants can get this game on. If they can equalise in their midfield, I think their forward line can start to kick goals and could be a big danger factor here. This one is in Sydney as well. If it was at Adelaide Oval, I'd probably have a bit of a different thought about it. But in Sydney, I'm going to be going the Giants in that one. But that's basically the tips that I wanted to break down. Other games, I think, be pretty straightforward. God, I'm going to rude to say that. I know that as soon as I said it, I was like, don't say that. But that's basically where I'm setting all the tips, guys. So, of course, our channel has had a league this year running through. So, let's take a look at our tipping comp. And after a really poor week last week, I only got 3. It was really poor. The games that I missed last week, I'll quickly go take a look. I tipped the Crows. That was a pretty tough one, obviously. I picked the Bulldogs over Brisbane. I did tip Hawthorn over Giants, so I got that one over a couple of people. I was the one who picked St Kilda. I was the one who picked Geelong over Sydney. I thought, hey, midway through the second quarter, I was onto something. But at the end of the day, Sydney came over the top and won. Essendon, yeah, they were pretty poor against Carlton. That's a big miss for me. But I did tip Collingwood, so I got that one back on some people who tipped Melbourne in that game. So I had a pretty poor week. My brother, on the other hand, looking at him quickly, he got 4, so he got back on the ledger a little bit. He's only 1 tip behind me now. But after a really poor week from me, I am sitting in 5th spot. My brother is sitting in 7th spot. I think he got up a few tips this week. And for the first time in a very long time, we have a new leader on our tipping comp. Now, he is equal with Brendan, but he has a better margin. So, Paul P. Paul's Viking 4-6 has taken the lead. So, congratulations to Paul. Now, this will be... Even if we have 2 people on the same amount of tips, it will count on margin. We're not giving away 2 winners. One winner. Okay, there's only one premier at the end of the year. You don't just have you were close, so no. No. Okay? But I am saying, good on Paul for taking... I think he jumped 1 spot on the ladder, but there are a couple of people who definitely dropped off this week. Because of the poor week to a couple of people, there's a gap now of 3 tips between 3rd and 4th. So Kirsty only got 2 last week. She's sitting in 4th spot with 74. But if she had a decent week last week, she could have jumped up the top. But Paul as well got the highest amount of tips in our league. He got 5 tips. So that's why he's pushed up into top spot. I think he jumped... I'm unsure how many tips he jumped, but he definitely wasn't top 2 or 3 last week. So he's jumped right up to the top. Congratulations, Paul. He's keeping himself in the hunt for a win in the Boundary Riders tipping comp, I guess. So when we get to the tipping next year, guys, we'll be doing another tipping comp and we'll make it open so everyone can join. And I think we only had 14 enter this year, so I'm sure we can get a bunch more of that. I think we've tripled our subscriber count, so I'm sure we can make a bigger league than that. But guys, that's basically the tips that we have for this week.